First of all, I wondered what were your reasons for approaching me for voice dialogue coaching?
Well, I think I felt that some of my kind of habits and behaviors were not helping me with getting balance in my life particularly, I think. Had a period of ill health, which I'm still sort of dealing with, and I've had to prioritize a lot of different things, and there are some aspects which I was sort of struggling to work out what my priorities were, or really like knowing what they were, but finding it hard to actually make that a reality in my actions, and sort of thinking, well, why do I do this? Why do I really value that? And is it actually helping me right now? I guess some of those kind of questions led me to think about different sort of techniques to understand my motivations better, and also to sort of give me more of an element of like choice about it. I think that feeling of being a little bit on autopilot, where you're kind of moving through a number of different things in your life just in the way you've always done it. But actually, when something big comes along and it's like, stop, you can't do it like that anymore. There's a little bit of a panicky thought, like, well, how else am I going to do it? That's always how I've done it. So I think just feeling that perhaps I needed a bit of help in understanding why I developed those particular habits, and like lifting the lid and just looking underneath and trying to work out what are the motivations, what's those habits, what have they given me, but what are they costing me, and is there like a different way? So yeah, I was interested in kind of finding out a bit more about that sort of thing really, and taking that kind of approach.
Yeah, okay, great. And why did you specifically choose to have that coaching with me?
Yeah, I think we meant I think I mentioned to you before, I think I'd, heard your podcast on, like, "You're Not a Frog," and I kinda liked your approach, and I sort of stored your name away somewhere as somebody who I might quite like to do some of this kind of work with at some point in my life, and then I think I just reached that point which I felt like, yeah, I kind of was getting some recovery with my chronic illness, and felt like I actually really need to protect that and to not fall back into old habits. And it just felt like it was and work was creeping in quite a bit more into my life. And I just felt like it was the right time to really take a look at some of that stuff and see if I could understand, then I could have a better chance of challenging within myself, is what I felt. And then having a feeling a little bit more of control over my choices rather than other things kind of controlling what I did. Even if I knew it wasn't helpful, I still couldn't help but go down that path. So yeah, I think it was just the right time, and I'd squirreled your name away, because I felt you could be a good person to
Mm.
work with.
Yeah, great. And yeah, it sounds like there was that real timing that came in that pushed you towards then taking that action.
Yes.
I wonder, were there any objections that you needed to overcome to book that first session?
Well, I suppose just the unknown, like not fully understanding exactly what was going to take place, as having never really done anything similar before. Finding it difficult sometimes to talk about my thoughts and feelings, just as something that I don't really do very much. So yeah, the thought of doing that with somebody you didn't know, and yeah, I guess that's all that kind of intimidating stuff when it comes to anything like this. If you're not a person who's frequently done anything sort of similar, yeah, just that kind of, I wonder what it's going to entail, but just feeling like I need to do something to try and change some of my patterns and habits, or at least to have an understanding of why they're there, um, to give me a chance of maybe making some changes.
Mm. And how do you feel about those initial objections now, having undergone some sessions?
Yeah, I think it just kind of vanishes away a bit as you get into it, and you kind of get to know the other person, get to trust them. You know, um, there's some aspects of it, where like where do you you'd ask me sometimes like where would you feel like in your body, and like to me this is like a whole new language as I've spent my whole life pressing the override button and carrying on regardless of whatever I felt in my body. I still was going to do what I'd planned to do. Um, so yeah, I think to start with that felt a bit strange for me, but as we kind of got into it, it just became like, oh, this is what we do in these sessions. This is totally normal and fine, and actually it's quite helpful because just things I never thought about before. Um, But yeah, I think as it got going, you get more accustomed to the approach.
Okay. So it sounds like getting out of that comfort zone was valuable once you've
Yeah.
taken that step. Yeah, great. What was the best thing about the coaching, or what made the biggest difference to you?
I think probably really getting back to the beginnings of things. I count myself to be a pretty lucky person in that I had, pretty happy childhood as far as these things go, but actually understanding and tracing really far back some of the behaviors that now I'm finding are not really serving me that well. Like, where did that come from? Where's the root of that? And why did it start? And what's kind of kept it going for so long? I think probably that's been the thing that I've come back to kind of within myself time and time again as we've been doing the sessions. Like, it's almost a relief to understand the really deep down motivation. And I just think it's very hard to get there by yourself.
Mm.
I think some of the things that I realized really went back a long way into my childhood, really early years, and like recognized, yeah, the reason that those that started and what it had been doing for me for a long time. Um, so yeah, I think those are the things that probably made the biggest difference to me.
Mm. And what did that allow you to do differently?
I think it allowed me to see how it was still showing up in my life now, and just to be like, oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, I notice that particular thing that we've been talking about in these sessions, like that's coming up again. Maybe I'm going to not respond like that, like I always do. Maybe I'm just going to sit back and maybe I'm just going to notice how it makes me feel. Actually, yeah, that does physically, thinking about this issue does make me feel physically very tense. Okay, I'm going to just like try and counter that with some relaxation exercise or whatever it is, just the noticing of it, I think, and recognizing that it's still sort of showing up,
Mm.
um, and then having just awareness itself brings so many advantages. I think then you've got half a chance to try and counter it a little bit, within yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So really understanding the root of things and where they came from, but then
Yeah,
allowing that to help you respond differently, right, than you always had done in the past.
yeah. I feel like you have a choice.
Mm.
I think I keep coming back to that, but maybe I'm a control freak. I know I am, but that feeling of things controlling how your behavior, that you're like, well, why am I doing, what's this, like actually kind of understanding, like, okay, well, that started because of this particular situation and it's kind of maybe just continued, um and that just feeling like, yeah, a little bit more control, a little bit more choice, a little bit, and the sort of what's the opposite of this kind of stuff. I somehow had never really considered that although you have a driver or you have a behavior, it's like, what is the opposite of that? And actually
Mm.
seeing those as two things in balance,
Mm.
and having some understanding of what it would feel like to have a different balance. I found that, yeah, really helpful.
Yeah. And how do you think that will change things for you moving forwards?
I think it already has, just recognizing in myself when some of these things show up and not just going down, tend to go down like the well trodden path, don't you? Whereas this allows me to stop and think, do I really want to go down that path? Like, what's the opposite of going down that path? And like, have I got space for that? Is that kind of giving myself permission, I think, sometimes to not go down those paths?
Mm.
um, and just, yeah, to be aware of the root of things, I think has been really immensely helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah, great. So what did I help you to do that you couldn't or wouldn't have done on your own?
I think it really is that really early stuff, like when you would say about a particular thing, like, when did this first show up for you? And I'm like, oh, like probably when I was 4, it's like a strange realization to think that actually we feel like we're making choices every day, but sometimes our we're just going down well trodden paths over and over and over again, um, and establishing that more fully by accident. So I think, yeah, I think I don't think I'd have got there by myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, because I think, you ask questions and there's like no escape from it in the nicest possible way, Becky, as in like, you can't think, oh, perhaps I'll go make a cup of tea now. Stop thinking about that. Like there's no escape from it. You're like, okay, that's a question. Okay, let's dig into my history and just find the answer, yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't have got there by myself because I just wouldn't have opened the book, frankly, or looked at it in that way. Kind of
Mm,
think you quite often you can think, oh, this is just how I am. And it's kind of like quite a good excuse for yourself to not challenge those things and not try and change things, you know? That very passive, like, this is just me, this is just how I am.
yeah.
Whereas I feel a bit more empowered to make my own choices.
Great. Yeah. And that's really brave work, right? To actually to show up and to go deep and to find the answers to these questions.
Yeah.
Like first place rather than go make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But it gives you
Yeah.
so much choice moving forwards, right? To do things you want to do.
I think it's a real power of understanding yourself and your motivations and your habits and patterns or whatever you want to call them. Like I definitely feel that power now. And you feel like less of a passenger in your
Mm,
own life because
mm,
you're actually like navigating the ship, you know? You're like, no, I'm not going to do that thing I always do, which is volunteer for everything, because actually I'm at capacity and that's okay. It's sort of, yeah, making positive choices becomes easier when you
mm.
understand why you did the opposite for a long time.
I love that. And you said specifically there about volunteering for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. What impact was that having on you?
I was just exhausted and I felt guilty all the time. Um, But I think, it's probably lots of women in my age group, we have that aspect of our personality, which puts others needs right at the top all the time. And yeah, again, that can sort of feel out of control because obviously we've got no control over what others ask of us.
Mm,
And so then again, you're down these paths, these familiar paths and then it's actually now I'll be a bit more like mindful to be, does that really work for me? And like, it's okay to say no. And actually, I need to preserve my energy for my priorities. And maybe that isn't making 100 cakes for the school. Today, maybe another day I would be able to do it, but at the
yeah.
moment, I cannot do it. And that's okay. So, yeah, feeling like more sense of control
Mm,
over what I
great.
do with my energy.
Yeah. 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 So less exhaustion because you've
Yeah.
got more energy because you're more in control of what you say yes to and what you say
Just
no.
more boundaried, I think,
Yeah.
and more aware of why I ended up as the endless volunteer. Um, and then you're like, you can make a different choice.
Yeah. Brilliant. And what's happened to the guilt?
I think I still have some guilt. But I see it for what it is,
Mm,
in a way, if you can sort of see it and be like, I see you guilt. Yep, I see that. But I'm not gonna let you make my decisions anymore, you know? And
great.
but I think we all have a bit of that, don't we? Society tells us we need to be everything to everybody all the time. Um, so I think I just notice it more and that makes you a bit freer from doing what the guilt tells you need to. And
Yeah.
yeah, again, that thing about having choice rather than just being automated. They've asked you for this, so you must do it. Full stop,
Yeah.
end of story. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely. And I hear you that guilt will sometimes show up, but that
Mm.
ability to see it for what it is and not just do the thing that makes you feel better, right? But actually to sit with it for
Yeah,
long enough to make a choice, right? That's fantastic. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's almost easier to do the thing rather than wrestle with the feelings that not doing the thing kind of evokes in you. But actually, even doing the thing is also when you have, you know, you have limited energy and time. It's like doing the thing is also tiring. So it's like you got to choose your poison, isn't it? But actually, I choose to not do the thing and to sort of sit and see the emotions and be like, okay, it's okay, it'll pass. You know, um, and just get into different habits.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's so powerful. Yeah. So great to hear. So what would you say to other people who are considering working with me in this way?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I definitely say encourage people to go for it. Really, I guess you've got to have the, it's not a huge time commitment, but you've got to have the time to put aside to kind of really be able to engage with it. So I think I waited until I was in a moment in my life where I felt like I have got the time to put towards this. And, you know, I think, you have to have the time. And also you need there's a little bit of time between sessions. So you do have that kind of like mental processing, that bedding in stage, which I really like myself as quite a slow processor in general. That really helps my brain to have some time to like let things percolate. And yeah, I definitely encourage people to try this approach, who really want to get to the root of why they do what they do. Um, and want sort of need help with that, as I think most people probably would. Yeah, I just think I was just surprised at how early a lot of this stuff was. I don't think I'd ever even have looked there thinking that's where the answers are.
Mm.
I'd have thought, oh, maybe, 20 years ago, that's where the answers are, whatever. But actually, the answers, for me anyway, were a lot further back. Um, so yeah, I'd really encourage people to try it, just to know yourself is powerful and to understand your motivations and where it comes from. Also gives you kind of like some control and gives you choices. Um, it makes you feel, yeah, more in control of your own life, I guess.
Yeah, right. And it's what so many of us need, right?
Yeah,
To feel that way. Yeah, yeah. And you're right, this stuff goes back so far, for everybody. That's where it all comes in. So
yeah.
really getting to the root of it, that deep work, yeah, can be really, really helpful. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to say that we haven't covered?
No, I mean, I think your style and approach was really good for me as a person, and um, you've been very easy, like in terms of setting up appointments and all that stuff. It's been really easy and stress free for me anyway. And you were often flexible if for whatever reason, if I wasn't well or something came up, that's also like reduces my stress about the whole thing, as a person who likes to show up when they've said they will. So that's been really helpful as well. And I think, you know, working in the same kind of industry kind of helps too, because I sort of know that you understand intricately like the pressures that I'm talking about. I don't have to explain anything. It's very easy for you to sort of step into my shoes to some respects and sort of understand the kind of professional pressures that you feel in this industry. Um, so yeah, I definitely would encourage anybody who's thinking about it, maybe have a chat with you, have some kind of contact, and understand a bit more about what's involved. And yeah, to kind of stick with it. I think as I got into it, I got more into it, if that makes sense. As in I understood it wasn't such a mystery what was going to happen each session. That first session it is a bit of a mystery. But like stick with it and you'll get the benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're right, they're kind of sticking with it through that initial, you're kind of stretching your usual comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, really good to hear that things flowed as you went on and you got more of an idea of what was going to be involved. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you mentioned my style and approach for those who may not be aware of that. How was that specifically helpful for you?
Well, I think that your style of questioning was helpful for me. You didn't really let me off the hook, which is kind of sometimes, like we're often expert communicators, aren't we, in this industry? So, we might duck and dive a bit from some of the harder stuff or try and wriggle out of it. But you never let me do that, which is a good thing. I mean, that's, like you would kind of like kindly and gently bring me back to like what the question was that I might have kind of gone a bit off off piste really. Um, so I think yeah, that's really helped. And yeah, obviously I knew it's a technique that was quite new to you as well. But it didn't really you couldn't really tell that as in like you seemed very accustomed and comfortable and sort of I felt very safe with you steering the ship. Um, And yeah, I didn't, if ever there were stages where I felt a bit like, I had a couple of times where I felt quite emotional, which is a bit spice to me. Someone who doesn't tend to express those things, but probably a sign that I did feel a level of comfort with
Mm.
you, and I was able to kind of like express that. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, thank you. It's been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and I'm so glad that it felt safe enough that you could bring all of you, and
Yeah,
that I could gently not let you off the hook, because that's what helps you get the most out of the sessions, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, I'm so glad that was useful as well.